Welcome everyone to the Co-Creators Convergence, Up Convergence, Unity and Peace. And this week we are going to have an ongoing series with my dear friend Michael Reccia from the UK, who is a trance medium who brought through the Joseph Communications, a very amazing series of 8 books, basically dictated from the other side, but Michael gets to claim authorship. So, but anyway, let me tell you a little bit about Michael. He has worked as a spirit medium for nearly 40 years. In his early days, he was using his gift to deliver messages at regular church services and spiritualist churches throughout the UK. He would hold lectures, workshops, and he also did something called remote postal readings that required him to sit in an empty room with nothing more than a photograph of the sitter and then listen for messages that were given to him for that person. He evolved. In 2005, Michael forged a conscious link with Joseph and began to bring through the Joseph Communications. Initially, the association was a clairvoyant and clairaudient experience. However, during the dictation of the second book, Revelations, the link developed into a deeper trance connection, with Michael completely vacating his body and mind during each communication session so that Joseph could take over his physical and mental facilities to deliver his addresses directly to the Band of Light. The Band of Light consists of 4 people: Michael Reccia, his life partner Jane Keene, Tony, and David. And you'll learn more about them through these books, because at the end of each chapter, they asked Joseph questions. And that's what I love about these books. I can read the books, think I understand it, and then the Band of Light asks questions. I go like, why didn't I think of that? But anyway, Michael isn't comfortable with the word channeler. He feels that because he completely vacates his body, it's more accurate to say a trance medium. But he regards himself as a simple but spiritually disciplined conduit through which the messages of Joseph and the thoughts and observations of higher evolved spirit guides can come through. He views his life work as the promotion of the Joseph Communications mission and a pivotal contribution to the elevation of individual and global spiritual consciousness. When not in trance or recovering from one, which takes a bit, Michael loves Jane, mankind, his fellow Band of Light members, art, animals, eating out, film, model making, reading, and finding the time to occasionally pause and draw breath. So, Michael, welcome. And just give us a little, I know you're going to be with us all week. We're going to discuss 2 books per day. Just give us a little bit from your own perspective on this journey you're on and you're going to take us on.
Yes, as a medium, I found myself dissatisfied with only being able to address a small congregation at a time or one person at a time. And the messages that were coming through were valuable to that person, to that congregation. But I wanted to be able to address the world if possible. And I also wanted to know where the messages were coming from. I wanted to know the mechanics of mediumship. If we were receiving messages from higher vibrations, what are those higher vibrations like? What's it like to live there? What's it like to communicate from those vibrations to the earth? And I thought that on a couple of occasions that I would stop doing what I was doing, because doing reading after reading after reading was quite exhausting. And on a couple of occasions I thought, I've had enough. I can't do what I feel I need to do. And then the connection was made with Joseph and everything changed, because Joseph had a message, has a message for the whole of humanity. And also through his books explained what the spirit spheres are like, what our life is like beyond physical death, who and what we really are here, the things that we are capable of as the spirit people, as actually the angelic people that we really are, and how we can make a difference to this world and transform this world and each other through the transmission of light. And Joseph built the knowledge from one book to the next. He would prepare us and say, this is how something operates. Now I've told you how it operates. This is how it connects to point B, to point C, to point D. So there was a growth, an expansion of knowledge throughout the 8 books. And I then determined that that would be my life's mission, to make this information as widely available as I and the Band of Light possibly can.
Awesome. Thank you, Michael. And I do recommend that reading the books in order is really, it's like he builds you up. Everything leads to the next book. And so without any further ado, I think we should dive in and learn about this throughout this week. So thank you everyone for joining us. Thank you, Michael, for volunteering your time to be part of the Up Convergence, and we shall begin. Michael, it's great to be here with you today, and we're going to hear about 2 of the Joseph Communication books. And the first one is called Trance Mission. And at 12 remarkable public trance demonstrations, the highly evolved spirit Joseph revealed his global mission. So I first have to say, I'm jealous I wasn't at any of these 12 transmissions.
Neither was I, no.
You weren't either. Oh, you got me on that one. So Michael sent you out of your body. You're now center stage. Tell us about these phenomenal experiences, where they were, when they were, and all the trappings, if you would.
Well, we had brought through, I believe, the first Joseph book, and we're halfway through the second, and I was then taken into trance by Joseph for the first time, and for the majority of the second book, Illumination. And we felt it necessary to convince people that we weren't sat somewhere away with a computer making this stuff up. And so for credibility, we felt it would be an excellent idea to hold a number of public trance demonstrations, which scared the life out of me. And so our dear friend Tony, who is a fellow member of the Band of Light, as you know, has this wonderful place called the Sanctuary of Healing in Lancashire in the UK. And there are a couple of meeting rooms in the sanctuary. And Tony, having come across the books by design rather than by accident, was so impressed that he said, look, we have facilities here. Let's go ahead and mount some public trance demonstrations. And so we invited as many people as we could get into the room, and they came. And I would wait in Tony's office and remember thinking to myself, what if he doesn't come? What if he doesn't turn up? It's not a given. It's down to Joseph turning up and delivering his communications. Mm-hmm. And so Jane would prepare the crowd and say, please don't use your mobile phone. Please turn them off. Please don't open sweets, open sweet wrappers. Please don't talk to each other. Mm-hmm. And they would say, yes, we won't do any of those things. And all of those things were done during various trance demonstrations. And of course, when you're in trance, you're in a very sensitive state, so noises can bring you back.
Right.
So I would wait in the office, and then Jane would come down the long corridor and call for me. And I would walk into the room. I would sit down. I would look at all the smiling and peaceful faces. I would take a breath as Michael, and the next breath it would be Joseph, and I would be out of the picture.
Wow.
And in the early trance demonstrations, it was an hour and a half to an hour and 3/4 of trance, until that became too much for me, because that's a very draining, energetic experience. Mm-hmm. And Joseph invited questions from members of the audience in each case. So there was no preparation. Joseph didn't know what was going to be asked of him. And a variety of topics were covered, and always Joseph gave a perfect answer. There was never a time when he was stumped for an answer, and with his usual eloquence, he would deliver information on the subject that had been asked about and more. Mm-hmm. We held a public trance demonstration in Ireland. We went over to Ireland on a boat that only had 3 out of 4 engines working. That was quite an experience.
Oh, no.
we arrived in a very ruffled state, and we held a demonstration in a hotel room. We booked this hotel room, and the hotel room, when we went in it, was it was a meeting room, and it was totally negatively charged.
Ooh.
Totally negatively charged. And I thought to myself, how on earth are we going to do a demonstration in this room? But I should have had faith in the guiding influences that work around us. And the atmosphere changed, and light was poured into the room. And it became this uplifted room that I could have worked in all night. And then at the end, when Joseph went, the atmosphere went down again, back to what it was.
Wow.
So the behind the scenes spirits had prepared exactly the right vibration so that Joseph could operate. In Trance Mission also, we include at the end of the book private or formerly private questions from Joseph trance sessions, because we would sometimes have a session with Joseph that was just based on questions. So there are questions from David and from Tony and from Jane, and the answers to those. So they're included at the end of the book as well. It's a double-sized book. It's twice the size of the other paperbacks because there is so much information in there. It's 400 plus pages. And there are, I believe, about 100 questions answered throughout the book. But it takes you into the atmosphere of a public trance demonstration. Because if Joseph laughs, we say Joseph's laughing at this point. We have people's names in there and the questions that they've asked and his reaction to those. And sometimes there were negative experiences as well, because sometimes people came to try and disrupt. And that's included as well. So it's an interesting journey. It's Joseph in public, as we say, rather than the closed circle situations that we need in order to bring through the Joseph books.
Well, Michael, I do have a question. So David and Tony and Jane and the whole audience can, ask questions and receive answers, but you're out of it. You're visiting a castle or another reality somewhere. And do you ever say to Jane, look, I'm going to write down this question that I have and give it to Jane? Now, you ask Joseph that when he comes through. I mean, do you ask, how do you get to ask questions of Joseph?
That's a very interesting question, Noel, and not one that's ever been asked before. And the answer is no, I've never said there's something that I want to ask. I think there is so much concentration on what needs to be done that I am just grateful that Joseph comes through, that Joseph speaks through me, through my physical and mental faculties, and that I'm still here at the end of the enterprise. Because the first couple of times that I went into trance, I wasn't at all sure that I'd come back. I had no idea what going into trance meant. I knew that I'd been asked to do this and had agreed to do this, but I thought, what if I can't get back in my body? What if I can't re-inhabit my mind? What if I die? But of course, that is not what happened, and I was protected throughout. But nevertheless, it was a very draining experience. And we went to several venues, not just the sanctuary, and each venue was different. At one venue, the electrical system was affected halfway through the trance, which set alarms off. So we had alarms going off, all the lights went out, and we had to, Joseph was silent until things were sorted out, and then he started speaking at the exact moment that he'd stopped speaking before the disruption. We've had all sorts of things happening. On another occasion, our video recorder fried itself. It fried itself. So we only got half the footage that we wanted to get.
Well,
so
then,
Joseph had warned that there might be phenomena at these meetings because of the energies that were being used to transmit the communications, and very often there were strange things happening.
Well, then, did Joseph, when things came back online and he's talking again, does he ever comment on why that happened or what just happened? Or does he just like ignore it and go on?
If he's halfway through something that's very serious and a very spiritual intent, then he carries on. But Joseph has a fantastic sense of humor, and so he would make the audience laugh as well, and would say something appropriate about what was happening. You know, so it was a wonderful evening, but I didn't get to share it. I should tell you about what happened afterwards as well, Noel, because suddenly an hour and a half had passed, and I was back in my body. And what happened when I stood up and Joseph came into my body and I sidestepped that, was that I was locked into place. And we have footage of the trance demonstrations where from the torso down, I am locked and my legs don't move for an hour and 3/4. So I would come back at the end of that period of time into this body where my legs had locked.
Wow.
So I would sit down and be in intense pain because the circulation had gone in my legs. I would then hobble off, leaving the congregation and Tony and Jane, who were taking the meeting, back into Tony's office. And the first thing that you realize that you've expended a huge amount of energy. And Tony would kindly prepare through his cafe at the sanctuary some chocolate cake for me and some salad and some sandwiches. And I would get hold of this tray of food and devour it like a thing possessed.
Wow.
Just because I needed the energy. I couldn't taste it, it was just gone. And each time we did a trance demonstration, I would say to myself, this time, Michael, when you come back, you are going to taste that lovely food. But it never happened. It was always gone. Gone in seconds, gone in 60 seconds. And I remember once looking in the mirror, because when you come back, strange things happen because your senses are not adjusted to this level. And it takes some time for them to be so. And I remember looking in the mirror in Tony's office at myself, my physical form, and thinking, I don't know what that is. I don't know what that is.
Really?
Another time in a circle situation, the four of us, I remember that Jane handed me a glass of water as I was coming round, and I looked at the glass of water and it wasn't there. I saw completely through the illusion because my senses had been heightened. So there were strange effects, strange consequences to having gone into trance on each occasion.
So they're taking you to a much higher vibration.
Yes.
And coming back in through the field.
It's like moving through treacle. It's like moving through mud. And for a week after each trance, there would be a series of events emotionally with me. I would be extremely fatigued, first of all. I would then be extremely angry, not with anyone, not with myself, just angry. I would then be extremely depressed. I would be extremely sad, and then gradually my energies would come back to normal on this level, and I could function as a, in quotes, normal human being.
So what does Jane do through all this? She just like, okay, he's going through his mad stage.
Well, she was she's always very protective and very supportive of what happens, and realizes that, for example, on the first day, we used to sit every Saturday to bring through, or once a month on a Saturday to bring through Joseph. And I would immediately go to bed afterwards. I would leave Jane and Tony and David downstairs. I would go upstairs, go to bed, have something to eat, and then I would be out of it for the best part of 2 days. So she was very supportive and understanding because she's lived through this so many times with me, you know. So an interesting experience.
I'm going to ask you a personal question.
Oh, gosh.
Well, you've written about it. So you wrote a book a long time ago, like called something like The Questions Most Commonly Asked of.
Answering the questions mediums are asked most, yes.
Right. And someone asked you about twin flames.
Yes.
And you said,
Yeah.
How did you've changed your opinion about that?
Well, I've grown, Noel, and I think that's something that we have to do spiritually. And I actually withdrew the book.
Ah.
The rest of the book was relevant, but I'd got it wrong with regard to twin flames, with regard to both halves of a soul being able to incarnate at the same time. And so when I saw that that was wrong, rather than deceive people, I decided to withdraw the book. So we pulped them. And
that was before you were communicating with Joseph.
yes, yes, it was at least 2 or 3 years, I think, before my. I sincerely believed that, but my view altered on a couple of points in the book, and I thought, no, I've got it wrong. So hold my hand up, withdraw the book, and that was it.
Wow. Well, do you have anything that you want to read or from that book that you selected for us?
Yes, to give the viewers some idea of the wide range of topics. Here, for example, is, I've got a little passage I want to read, but before I do that, here are the topics covered in Trance session number 13, for example. Does each incarnation aid a soul's progression? The cleansing spheres. Are some souls forced to reincarnate? The Earth's original purpose. Advanced souls who return to Earth to help. The reason for natural disasters. The limitation of words. What is the next spiritual phase for mankind? Is the date of 21st of December 2012 significant?
Ah.
Assessing the truth of spiritual concepts. Using God power. Free will. The fall. Who created God? Joseph's previous lives. And these are all questions that were asked during the trance sessions. So there's quite a spread in there. But I'd like to read from the trance session of the 24th of March 2010. And this is just a snap of a response from Joseph. And the question from a gentleman called Chris Quartermain was, I'd like you to clarify a little bit more about what we can actually do practically to spread light into this world. And Joseph replies, first of all, you have to unlearn. You have to realize that a great many of the concepts that you've been brought up into are wrong. You have to understand where you come from, and you have to understand where you are going to. You have to understand that you are a part of God, that you are a light, that you are an angel. You have to understand that this world is sticky. This world is seductive. This world wants you to be a part of it for as long as it can possibly hold on to you. Why? Because if you leave it, if you move on from this planet, if you decide that your pathway from this point leads through the spiritual spheres and back to God, it has lost a degree of its power. So it is in the interests of the field, and he's talking about the field of human consciousness, to instill in you a sense of aging, a sense of sickness, a sense of what can I do? A sense of poverty, a sense that it is all futile. You have to unlearn. You have to go into the quiet by yourself, envelop yourself in an envelope of light and say, God, talk to me. And the God within will move you in different ways, either through speech or through images or through a wonderful silence and sense of well-being that you have not known thus far in your life. Once you feel that and accept that, then you can move forwards in saying, this is more powerful than the world that I have known up to this point. It's very convenient. When a soul incarnates on earth, the memory goes. The memory begins as a child here, but the memory of what lay before goes, because the soul is enveloped in the negative field of consciousness. If you had that memory now, you would not ask the question. You would send light to everyone. Be light for everyone. Imbue light into everything that you experience to change things now. But your memory has been cruelly taken away from you by the field. It was not always like that. When you were an angelic being, encased not in matter, but in light, you came here to experience, to play, to understand your creative tendencies, the power of your heart mind, the power of God flowing through you. You came here to look at different vistas, different horizons, and you had a connection to God that you knew consciously. That feeling of peace was with you consciously and always, because you knew where you had come from. You knew that at a certain time you could move out of this area of play and return to another sphere of consciousness. Unfortunately, none of you has that luxury now. You return here and your connection to God is still there, but your memory of God, your memory of things beyond this physicality is taken away from you. So, your key to changing things is to begin to remember. Because as you begin to remember who you are and remember the God that is at the heart of you, you begin to forget the effects of the field. And the stronger you grow in God memory, in an assurance each day that you are a part of God, that nothing can harm you, and that you are light, the stronger you grow. The effects of the field grow less on you. And that was just one question. That's just part of one question that Joseph answered.
Oh, that was just part.
Part, yeah.
Wow. We're gonna have to go back and reread that one. It's kind of like circling through, but very, very powerful. So it used to be that we controlled the field, and now it feels like the field controls us. Is that,
Yeah.
would that be accurate?
Yes, we buy into it, don't we? We're not drawing as an energy source from our heart minds. We're drawing from the limited, encased field of energy that is the field of human consciousness, the collective thoughts of human consciousness that are creative and therefore maintain the world as we see it. And we don't understand that we can unmake the world as we see it and create a different world by believing in and seeing something different infused with light. And it is really as simple as that. But it's so complicated and difficult for us because we are used to accepting that the world outside of us is total reality. And total reality lies not out there, but in here, and can be changed, dependent on the creative spin we put on our thoughts and our imaginations.
Well, that was really fascinating. And thank you for sharing some of those questions, because you know, I was going like, I know I read that book, but I got to go back and reread those answers, because those are great questions that you got. So, but doing trance like that is out of the question, out of the picture at this point, like having an open public.
Yes, I'm 15 years older than I was, and the energies that are involved would deplete me for quite some time. And there is the time needed to get the message out, the existing message that we have. And as you know, Noel, I've sat in trance recently on 2 occasions to put the footage. I sat in trance with the rest of the Band of Light to put the footage on our YouTube channel because I felt it was so important to do so at this pivotal time in our existence. But that is not going to be the norm, because I have no intention of being on a higher vibration quite yet.
Well, speaking of that YouTube channel, I don't think it's too soon to invite people to go to youtube.com/the Joseph Communications.
Yes.
And if you subscribe there, this is a very prolific group. They're putting out content, original content, all the time. So if you go there and subscribe, you will automatically receive these new messages. And yes, it's been a while since you sat in trance, bringing through messages, if I understand correctly.
That's right.
So yes, we have a 3-part message going on. I think we might play that also later this week.
Yeah.
So, well, I think this is a good point to transition to the last book of the 8 that we're going to be speaking about. Many Voices, One Mission. And that one I'm in the middle of rereading now. So the last book we were talking about, Trance Mission, Joseph is answering all these questions coming in. And here is the opportunity for you to talk more about the totality of the soul group and the things that they say they want to make sure gets out to us. So Michael, would you talk about the Many Voices, One Mission, group soul wisdom from the Joseph perspective?
Yes, I suppose you could call this an epic production, because it was the best part of 15 years in the making.
Wow.
And I've got to go back to the time when Jane and I first got together on a physical level during this incarnation.
Mm-hmm.
And as soon as we got together, my ability to connect to the soul group was boosted, as you would expect, because 2 halves of the same soul come together and there's a greater capacity to work. And so for the first 2 years of our courtship, there's an old word,
Still works.
Wherever we were, we would have members of the soul group, people that I recognized because I'd worked with them for years, coming through to deliver lectures on a variety of subjects. talking about the afterlife, talking about the sacredness of the earth, talking about health and healing, talking about spirituality. And as you know from reading the book, very often we would, because we were busy with transcribing and publishing the Joseph Communications that time, if we managed to get a few days off, and we don't go far on our holidays, we're quite home birds, but we do like to get away sometimes and have a nice meal and stay somewhere nice. Whenever we went away, the spirits would see it as an opportunity to allow us to work, bringing through lectures on behalf of humanity, on behalf of all mankind. And so we would, for example, find ourselves on a beach, walking along this lovely beach in the sunshine, and then somebody would start to talk to us. And rather than be arrested by the police for talking to myself, we would withdraw to a shelter, a little beach shelter, which prior to somebody talking to us would have been very quiet. Now, the minute that we sat in that shelter with our recorder on, dogs would come into the shelter, children would start playing around the shelter, people would start trying to talk to us or would talk to each other around the shelter, and we'd have to move on to somewhere else. So it was a matter of, sorry, whoever the communicator is, hold that thought, and then we'd find somewhere else quiet, and then another section of the lecture would come through. And these were glorious, glorious talks, addresses on a variety of subjects that displayed a huge love for humanity, a huge love for the animal kingdom and for the planet, a huge love of what we really are, and a need to explain in loving terms who we are, why we're here, and what we can do to make things better for ourselves. And so we had collected these addresses, lectures, over a period of 2 years from, I think, 14 different guides, 14 different communicators. And we hadn't had the opportunity to publish them because there was always a new Joseph book. In fact, Joseph himself is in many voices, one mission. And so are the Persian gentleman. These are all terms that we have given to these spirits. They're not their actual names. They are our names for them. And so the Persian gentleman would come through. Jane's protective guide, Silver Star, came through on many occasions. A wonderful ancient spirit I call the Aboriginal gentleman came through on 2 or 3 occasions. And his words are absolutely sublime. And his love for creation is sublime. Also included at the end of the book are my first 2 public trance demonstrations. And they're not by Joseph. On one occasion, the Persian gentleman took me over. And on the second occasion, the spirit we call the Big Indian took me over.
Indian.
And those were I think the scariest instances of trance, because at that time, I had no idea what would happen. As I said earlier, I had no idea whether I would come back. But they are lovely addresses by these 2 spirits, and they're included in the book too. So we finally, after Joseph had published, after we got the last book through, got the last communication through from Joseph for a book, we decided that Many Voices, One Mission had the right to be published too, and also showed how members of the soul group communicated with each other, communicated with us, and that it wasn't just one personality, but there were multiple personalities from this soul group that cared enough about us to come through and talk to us and lift literally our spirits and show us a way out of our current problems.
Yes, when I started reading this book again, you described them each and kind of the background of their stories.
Yes, you get the backstory, yes.
Yeah, the backstory on these, the members of the soul group. And I have 2 questions. One I find is fascinating is Silver Star is Jane's particular guardian, and the Persian gentleman, PG, is yours, as I understand it.
That's right, yes.
But, Silver Star really intrigued me in that Silver Star said in the previous life that he committed suicide. Is that correct?
He did indeed, yes, yes. He suspected that his wife was having an affair. He was a farmer. He was from the US, from the United States. He was a farmer, And he came home one night and discovered that she was indeed having an affair. And he had a pickup truck. This was in the 1940s. He had a pickup truck, and he had a large dog that usually appears with him that he called Jackson. And I think was a Rhodesian Ridgeback, something of that size, an enormous dog. And he put his dog in the pickup truck and he set off, and he went off a bridge, and they were both killed. And it wasn't made clear whether he'd committed suicide or not. And so I think he was buried in hallowed ground, but he had in fact committed suicide, and he'd taken his dog with him whilst the balance of his mind was disturbed. Now, Silver Star comes through as a Native American Indian, and he wasn't a Native American Indian. He comes through in this silver costume and a headdress, and he says that he does that because the people who are making a transition, who are not familiar with the workings of the afterlife, respond more readily to him in that costume than they do as he is as an ordinary farmer, which is how he sometimes comes through, because they expect, because of, there is a tradition, isn't there, that mediums have Native American guides.
Yes.
And so there is an expectation, and so they respond to that, the way he dresses, and they think that he is Native American, and he can talk to them in the way that he wants to talk to them. Of course, as a spirit, he doesn't belong to any nationality. He's probably been every nationality that you can possibly be in the past. But as a result, to get back to his suicide, he said as a result of his suicide, there was no judgment, but he felt a pull back to the earth because he hadn't completed the cycle of that particular life. He'd cut it short. So he said that he had to, on occasion, return to the earth, not in a physical body, but return to the earth as a spirit and contemplate the earth, contemplate aspects of the earth and aspects of what he would have gone through had he allowed his life to come to full term as this mechanism that it is, this arch of energy that it is. And so there were consequences, but not dealt to him as a judgment. There was no criticism of what he'd done, but his own spirit had this pull back to the earth in order to resolve issues that would have been resolved had he lived the span of time he was supposed to live here in a physical body.
That's really, really fascinating and helpful because, you know, at this time, the suicide rate is very high around the planet.
Yes.
And, you know, for many reasons. And so maybe that's why I just found the Silver Star description and story so fascinating, because there's so much judgment around suicide on this side. And, and evidently not on that side. But what's also fascinating about Silver Star, isn't he the boat tender?
No, that's the big Indian.
Oh, that's a big Indian. Okay.
This is a wonderful gentleman who, whenever there's been a death in my family, now he's moved on from the job that he did, from the occupation that he had through choice. Whenever there was a death imminent in my family, he would turn up. Now he's an imposing man. He has a headdress on, he's all dressed in white, and he looks about 7 to 8 feet tall. So when this spirit turns up, you pay attention. And recently, he has moved on to work more, to a greater extent, with the Band of Light. He used to share his time between helping us and working on the boat, which is we've talked about in another interview. But he still comes in occasionally, and there is a knee-jerk reaction to him coming in. And I look at him and say, "Who's dying? Who's going?" And he will say, "For goodness sake, I've come to see how you are, or I've come to bring you this information. Don't associate me," because he used to take people across. "Don't associate me with taking people across now." So yes, the big Indian, as we call him, our term for him, worked on the boat for the equivalent of 200 years in our time. Taking people over. And he has the biggest heart of any spirit that I have worked with. I've seen him close to tears because of the plight of some of the spirits that go over, and close to tears because of the plight of mankind, of humanity. So this is a very strong but extremely loving spirit who cares about us.
Mm. And finally, would you tell us, well, not finally, I'm enjoying this so much. Would you tell us about your personal PG, the Persian gentleman, your relationship with him, because that's been lifelong, or many lives long.
Yes, yes. I first met up with PG consciously in this life through Joan, my spiritual teacher.
Mm-hmm.
He was one of the, it was set up as I was developing as a medium, and she taught me to develop as a medium. It was set up so that we could both see the same people, which was tremendously reassuring for me, developing in confidence to do what I was going to do.
Mm-hmm.
And it was set up so that I would start a message, I would bring through some information,
Mm-hmm.
she would continue it, and I would end it seamlessly.
Wow.
And one of the people that I began to see regularly was this wonderful gentleman who very often dressed in purple, but would come in different colors depending on how he felt. Black gentleman, and would come with these exquisite robes on, but always with a hat that matched. Mm-hmm. In color and in texture. There are these fabulous textures over the surface of his robe. Mm-hmm. But most often he would come in purple. A tremendous dry sense of humor, tremendous joy in life. And he was Joan's guide since she was been Joan's guide since she was a girl.
Oh, really?
Now, at that point, he was someone that I saw whenever I sat with Joan, which was weekly as I was developing as a medium. Mm-hmm. But then it became clear as the years went past that he also knew me and I knew him. Mm-hmm. And as I gained much of my spiritual consciousness back, I realized that this gentleman had been involved not just with Joan, but with myself since birth and since before my birth. And PG is the gentleman responsible for setting up the energies for each Joseph trance communication. So he and a team would set up the bubble of energy within which Joseph could work. Mm-hmm. And then at the end of each trance session, he would deconstruct those energies and make sure that I was safe and would stand by me to see that I was safely back in my body, and then would go back to his dimension, his higher vibration.
Oh. And PG came through recently, didn't he, with a message? Do you want to talk about that, Michael?
Yes, there is a crucial message. I think most viewers would agree that this has been a very difficult year. And I have had a sense psychically for 18 months to 2 years that something was terribly wrong and something very awful was about to happen. I could feel the vibration pulled down. And as we sat for the Joseph communications, every so often we would be told, look, it's more difficult for us to get through now because the earth has consolidated itself negatively yet again. And by the earth, I mean humanity.
Okay. I was going to say, not Gaia.
Oh, no, not at all. Not the deer planet and not the
right.
animal
planet.
And PG came through a few weeks ago and said, I would like to talk in trance through you because I have an urgent message for all humanity. I have to point out to people that they need to make the right decisions at this time. Mm-hmm. And so he delivered that emotional footage a few weeks ago, and we have it on our YouTube channel.
Right. And we're going to put well, I would say go to the YouTube channel. YouTube, just go to YouTube / Joseph Communications. And if you would, subscribe and then also share that message because it is a very emotional message. And it was really a gift that he came back because when I met you 2 years ago, you had kind of sworn off doing any more trance because it's so difficult to come back physically.
I felt it necessary. I felt for the sake of humanity and what's happening that I had to let PG take me over, and also recently Joseph take me over so that they could deliver urgent, crucial information for humanity at this time. And so I gave myself over again. I still receive information from the soul group, and but I am attempting at the moment to do this in clairvoyance from now on, so that I'm not so debilitated afterwards. So it's a switch back to the way that I used to work. But we will share all future information with everyone as it comes through.
Now, Michael, did you have something you wanted to share out of Many Voices, One Mission?
Yes, I mean, there are many sections in Many Voices, One Mission.
It's a fabulous book. All of them are, but I'm just, rereading this one right now, and I've got something to share too.
Oh, that's good. That's good. This, funnily enough, we've been talking about Silver Star, and this is an excerpt from an address he gave to us from the Sacred Earth section of Many Voices, One Mission, called Respect for All Aspects of Creation. So we're halfway through this. This is not the entire answer, but he says, a tree is a complex expression of life, but very simplistic, even more simplistic than the pig and the animal kingdom. Now, he came through with a pig. He came through with a pig to say, look, this is my brother. There is no difference between me and this pig. We are both spirit. So he's saying more simplistic than the pig and the animal kingdom in the way that it operates, in the way that it exists, and in the way that it is, and yet it is sentient and capable of communication with other trees and with the animal kingdom. A tree is an example for us of how we should live, because a tree experiences growth through stillness. The tree doesn't get up and walk anywhere. The tree is still. It is rooted to one spot, as people on earth should be rooted to one spot, to the God within. And as a result of that, growth comes in. Not only growth, but an acceptance of change, and flowing through it, the means of coping with that change. Look how much longer the tree survives on earth than you do. To bring back the illustration of the earth also talks to mankind. And the earth at the moment is saying, I am sick. I am out of harmony with my Creator because of your influence, because of the barrier that you have put up between me and my source. My only way to regain energy at the moment is through you and through your actions. But you turn your back on me. Every day, you turn your back on me. And so my life force is dying out rather more quickly than it was. But even in that, even in what you would consider a death throw, the earth is talking to you and is saying, if you turn your back on the source, then you die out. If you turn your back on the source, you die out. And that is what people on earth are doing at the moment. They are turning their backs on the source, on the God within. The whole of creation talks to you, the animal kingdom, the plant life, and the earth itself, presenting you with this message that God is constantly putting in front of your eyes to show you a different way and to make you think. As technology advances, you divorce yourselves from nature even more. You surround yourselves with the heavy constructs that you make, and you ignore the natural world. You plunder the earth, and then you ignore the earth. You turn your backs on the system of plant life. You turn your backs on the oceans, and increasingly, you are becoming creatures who live isolated lives. There is a network of animal life. There is a network of plant life, and there should be a network of human souls. But those human souls are becoming far more isolated than they have ever been. So they reject the God within, they reject companionship without, and they expect the world to keep turning and to provide them with what they feel they need to be happy. Not a lot to say after that. No, is there really?
There's not a lot to say after that.
And that was dictated to us over a decade ago.
Wow.
So many things in the books are now becoming very, very relevant indeed.
Mm-hmm.
There were predictions in the books that are now happening.
Wow. Well, it's heartbreaking, and that's why I just find the work that you and the Band of Light and the Soul Group are bringing forward to us. Whatever I can do, I've just Bob and I have just kind of made it our mission too, to try to help to get this word out, because it's just heartbreaking what's going on. And, you know, so we all need to return home,
Yes.
and home is where the heart is.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
That's where our God light is. But, well, I'll tell you, I do struggle. And I had marked something, and I had it all marked up, and now I can't find it. So I guess I'm not supposed to bring that forward. But so it was about, you know, just how to send light to those that we feel are wrong, or that we
Yes.
hate what they're doing.
Yes. Yes. The importance of doing that. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And that if we are angry with people, then we add to their strength in being angry themselves. We reinforce all those things about them that we feel are wrong. And so the ones that cause the most disruption in our world are the ones that most need the light. And people may say, well, what good is it sending light to them? They're not going to respond, but yes, they will. Because the light strengthens the light that is within each of those people, to the point where they have to listen to and acknowledge that light. And at that point, they change. You can never change anybody from without. You've always got to change people from within. And that means that their perception changes, and they realize something about themselves and their approach to the world by themselves. And the light gives them enough illumination to consider a better way, a more spiritual way. It's the only way that we can address the problems that certain souls pose for us, is to love those problems away, is to lighten their load, is to change their mind by them changing their own mind, because they have enough light within them to look at things and think, you know, I've got to do this a different way.
Absolutely. Well, let's just close here, Michael, and invite everyone to your meditations that you do, sending the light.
Yes, yes, on Mondays and Wednesdays and Fridays, at times that are given on our Facebook pages, Michael G. Reccia and the Joseph Communications. We unite in spirit, wherever we are in the world, to send light out unconditionally into the world to make a difference. And so the more people that join in with those days, the more light we have at our disposal. We're bringing out divine heart light, we're streaming it into the world. It's unconditional, it doesn't judge, and it lightens things, and it changes things. And so we will continue to do that until things have changed.
And it's urgent.
It is very, very urgent. Yeah, yeah.
Well, Michael, thank you so much. Thank you so much for spending these mornings recording with me, so we can share this good words and good wisdom. And I just love the message, and so grateful. I guess that's the word I want to end on, is just gratitude for this journey you've been on, how all of you are sharing it. And I pledge to do my best to join you and to get the word out.
And gratitude from our side as well for what you're doing, Noah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Take care.